Hello and welcome to the channel again. This is Sam trying to spin to win on Swift. Alright, ZRL Stage 3 is upon us. A scratch race on the Roads to Ruins reverse course in Watopia. I actually missed last week's race. I was away skiing, which was a lot of fun, but that looked a cracking race. So I'm happy to be back racing myself today. However, I must admit, I have no idea what the form is going to be like today.
No more excuses.
Well, sorry, I do have to get a few excuses in at least. As I said, I have no idea what the racing form will be like. I haven't raced for 2 weeks and I was off the bike for almost a week. And the other day, getting back into training, I had an absolutely terrible VO2 max session. Only finished 2 out of the 5 reps, which was bad.
You are soft, weak!
I know. You don't have to tell me. But on the positive side, I've had a couple good Zone 2 rides in the last 2 days. So I think the engine at least is coming back. But the top end or the turbo, if you will, I have no idea. We're just gonna have to give it a good crack today and see how we do. Although, I think old Jonah is gonna be laughing at me today. So, the course today is pretty spicy, I must say. A lot of up and downs with 2 bigger climbs. Over 30 kilometers and just under 300 meters of elevation. So, there should be plenty of time and opportunity for separations to occur. Now the question is, can I manage to stay with the front pack the whole way?
You serious?
It feels like he's really laughing at me today. Well, before we get into the action, let's have a quick look at the standings after 2 races, as well as the competition that we're going to be facing today. If we look at the results of race 1, the team time trial, as well as race 2, the points race, and tally up the results, we see that 2Gas are in first place with 30 points, just 1 point ahead of my team, Team Swedish Swifters Mimmer at 29 points, with Droid Twitch 1 point behind us at 28 points. So, a very close race at the top of the leaderboard, that is for sure. Hopefully we can do well today and make sure we stay in the top 3, as otherwise my prediction at the start of the season for a top 3 finish will come under threat. And we don't want that. No sir, we do not. So, for today's race, I have taken a screenshot of the Velo ratings just before we started. We can see that we actually have 4 team members in the top 15, which should indicate that we will at least do reasonably well today. However, I think honestly that my Velo rating is probably a bit high for where my current form is, so it's for sure not a given that we, or rather I, will finish as high as predicted here by the Velo score. Okay, time to get the action underway.
Let's race.
And we are off. I made a bit of a mistake here in that my warm-up was not as good as it should have been. Therefore, with the usual swift, stupidly hard start, I give my body a bit of an unwanted initial push, which again could have been minimized with better preparation. Perhaps some people can just jump on the bike with 10 seconds to go and then push 300 or 400 watts for a minute with no issues. But for me, if I start cold like this, I burn matches right away. Schoolboy error here. Okay, on to today's tactics. Pretty simple for me today, especially since I don't know where my racing form is. So for me, it is draft as much as I can and then just try to hang on to the front group up the 2 climbs. And if I'm there at the end, well, you never know what can happen. I think if I was on good form, I would back myself to be able to implement this tactic against this level of opposition. But again, I'm a bit in the dark at the moment regarding my form, in particular my 3 to 5 minute efforts, which will be critical today. So I am preparing myself for a tough race. And just like that, we're already at the first little bump in the road, the dirty Sopresa. I decided to use my steamroller here as I wanted to get to the first big climb as fresh as I possibly could. And we kept a decent pace, nothing crazy, up this little incline, and I made sure I stayed in the pack and drafted as much as I could. I had no issues here, but I did notice that my heart rate was creeping quite high. A bit of a worrying sign so early in the race. A short skip forward, and we are now starting the first big climb of the day. The start of the epic come reverse until the jungle intersection. I felt reasonably good at the start of the climb, and I knew that the first 1 to 2 minutes would be relatively hard as we go up the steep bits at the start. So I was prepared to push here, hoping then that the pace would settle down somewhat when we reached the bridge of Dying Watts, where I could hopefully draft and get a bit of a breather, before another push after the bridge. While the pace wasn't crazy high, it was for sure a solid effort. And you can see in the screen in the top right corner that the peloton was getting very strung out. I stuck to my plan of sticking with the front and drafting as much as I could, and while I was getting a bit tired, I never felt in trouble on this climb or at risk of losing the front. As we get towards the end of the climb, somebody goes off the front, but I am certainly not trying to close that down. He's a brave man going this early, or perhaps just a very strong climber. I'm also very happy to see that all of my teammates from the Swedish Swifters Mimmer were still in the front group. Great riding from all of Team Mimmer. However, I also saw a lot of two-gas shirts around me, so the race was certainly still on. Okay, another skip forward, and now we're at the start of the final climb, up the jungle climb. I was for sure feeling the effort at this point. I had not been able to rest as much as I would have liked down the descent from the epic climb. While we went slow in places, there were also sections where the peloton pushed quite hard. So, at least for me, I didn't get a really long section of real rest. We also pushed reasonably hard in the little flat section leading up to the climb, so I'm already a bit fatigued going into this climb here. Doesn't bode well, does it? So my plan was the same for this climb as the first. Just draft as much as I could and try to stick with the front group. And for the first couple of minutes, I am doing okay. Heart rate is creeping up though towards 170, and that's usually where my real danger zones start. I tried to rest a bit on the little blue sections between the climbing. Not sure how much rest I actually got, but perhaps a bit of mental rest if nothing else. At this point I can still see 6 Mimmer shirts, so we're all hanging in there. Good job. This climb, at least for me, is really mentally tough. It's not that steep, a steady 3-5% in most places, but man, it feels hard. Not sure why. Perhaps the gravel played on my mind or something, but I was really starting to feel the effort as we get towards the 20-kilometer mark. I then hit my power up to get a bit of a break, and it seems to work, as I'm still staying with the front. But alarmingly, my heart rate is closing in on 180. That is, as you know. We hit the flattish section before the final push, and I'm already digging deep here. Still see a lot of Mimmer shirts, which kept me motivated, and I prepare for the final push. I have managed to get my heart rate down somewhat to under 170, but still I'm on the limit here, for sure. Going up the last incline felt like it took forever, but it was probably only a minute or so. People went really hard here, and I was starting slowly to lose the front. I could see my teammate Magnus also at the back of the group, and I was hoping we could push each other to stay on. We now hit the final red section, heart rate close to 180, and I need this climb to stop very, very, very soon, or I'm out the back. So I give it everything I can here, and I kept thinking the finish line was at the top of the hill. And slowly I'm catching up, and when I see the blue downhill section getting closer on the minimap, I know I have made this selection. Although I burned 100% of my matches on that hill. Absolutely shattered at the top. Really happy to see Magnus made it also. And the two Niklases on our team were there as well. In fact, they seemed to be at the pointy end all the way up the climb. So well done to them. I was actually surprised when I looked at Strava on this segment. I only, if you will, averaged some 320 watts for the 5.5 minutes it took to get up. But man, that felt a lot harder than 320 watts, let me tell you. We rejoined the action with around 2 kilometers to go. The pace had been relatively slow since the last climb, hopefully because everybody was as tired as I was. Perhaps that's wishful thinking. But I had at least managed to get a bit of a rest. But I knew as soon as I started to push, I would fatigue very, very quickly. So a long break was out of the question, at least for me. The pace picks up as we go up the little bump and exit the tunnel. And my focus is now on trying to stay towards the front of the group so I can have a dig at the sprint. I get up the little incline okay, and with 1 kilometer to go, I'm in a good position. But the legs are already screaming at me. And people start to wind it up from around 700 meters to go, and I am now fighting to stay towards the front. And with around 400 meters, I see people starting to go, so I start my sprint also, and I push as hard as I can. My watts were nothing to write home about in that sprint, but I can assure you I gave it 100%. Normally, if I'm reasonably fresh, I can push pretty decent watts, but around 600 to 700 watts was all I could manage for this sprint. And it certainly wasn't enough to stay at the front. And I roll over the line in 11th place. But I am super happy to see that Niklas on our team took the win. Chapeau. So, the results. As already mentioned, I finished in 11th place. But more importantly, my team had an excellent day and actually ended up winning the race. We finished in 1st, 4th, 11th, 12th, 21st and 29th place. Fantastic effort. Tugas was initially just behind us, but they actually had one Cat A rider in the race. So they got penalized for that and ended up in 3rd. So that actually means that going into race 4, we are now on top of the leaderboard. Cracking effort by the Swedes, if I may say so myself. We just need to keep it going now in the last 3 races. Easier said than done. I also have a feeling that Tugas will be super motivated after today. But bring it on. All right, post-race thoughts. Wow, that was a tough race. I almost got dropped on the second hill there. Very, very close. But I hung in there and gave it a good go at the end. Just didn't really have that extra oomph at the finish to get into the top 10 or even higher. But fantastic result for us. 1st, 4th, 11th, 12th, 21st and 30th, I think. Something like that. Very good. Whether we won, I'm not sure. Tugas is very strong, but we should be there and thereabouts today. So congratulations to the team. That was a really good team performance. For me, better than I expected. I definitely don't feel at tip-top shape, especially on the top end, the 5-minute kind of efforts that we actually had to do today. But at least I hung in there. So I'm really, really pleased with that. Hopefully I can kick on and get a bit stronger now and get a good training block in the legs. So yeah, looking forward to that. Anyway, we'll cut it short today. Really good race, really enjoyed it. Fantastic result from the boys. Well done. And I'll see you next week. This is Sam, trying to spin to win on Swift. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.